moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. This is an interesting question. I've heard people have sent these questions to me a lot, and I see them in the comments as well. And it's a question of like, I'm not happy. What can I do to help? Is kind of the basic premise. I don't like a lot of the current mainstream comics. How do I make it better? I like that question. I was talking about this with an editor, and they're like, I wish people would just mind their own business. And it's unfair, by the way. The majority of people, I'm sometimes presenting these things, I think, unfairly. It's not like it's this adversarially of this angry editor. It's like fuck all the fans. That's not what's going on. In many cases, it's exhaustion. It's other things. I want to make sure that it's not presented as dramatic as it probably sounds. But I like that question because I like the meaning behind it. If you break that question down, it comes to, I don't like something. How can I make it better? This second part shows that the person's invested and anxious for improvements to be made. And I think there's a lesson for comics. I don't know if it's a lesson, just it's something to take heart in. That right now you have a big customer base who, even though they may be unhappy about things, and this is why I always cringe. Who's that? Andrew Farrago is a guy. He likes to. It's one of those people who like seems. I rarely encounter this person. The person does not inherently matter in the grand scheme of things from comics, but every time I run across a guy, the guy's like wanting to grind this axe against the people who are complaining about comics. It's like he has a magical like Batcave detector. It's like dee. Okay, there's a tweet here of somebody who's angry about comics. Quickly swoop in and mock and make fun of that person and try to humiliate them for being wrong about not liking comics. What a colossal waste of time, by the way. Just point blank. With all the time we have in our lives, which as much as it seems like a lot of time, it's not. Life is fleeting. It's over. One day you're doing fine. You're avoiding Arby's like a rational human being. The next minute you step into the middle of the street, hit by a bus, you're done. And life's over. Life can be quick. Why would you want to spend so much of your life debunking people who don't like something? Like what a waste. What a waste of your time. What a waste of your life. It is. I feel like the people who go and they complain all the time. It's also kind of a waste. But a bigger waste is the people who complain about people who complain. That's like taking a dumb thing and then doubling down on it. It'd be like after I ate an Arby's. I was on my mind because I filmed a little thing earlier today for Gemini Jump where I promised everyone if the thing got fulfilled quickly, and it did. It got fulfilled in the live stream that announced it, which was great. And I said if it was fulfilled quickly, I'd eat Arby's. I'd take one for the team. I'd eat Arby's. Sure enough, you did it. I went and ate that Arby's. It's now like 5 hours later, and that Arby's is still with me in my stomach. And I know it's not going to be with me much longer. But it does not feel good in here. I'm just saying. That was not a good decision on my part, but I keep my word. Anyway, why double down on something that's not creating any productive value for the people who out there who feel like it's their duty to go out there and fight the haters? Like, if you feel like the activity of the haters is dumb and useless and wrong, why are you investing energy into fight? You're not doing anything productive. You're doing worse than the people you're complaining about. That's madness. But I was listening. I listened to various kind of. I don't really like TED Talks. Once you listen to enough TED Talks, you start to. There's a cadence and a way they all kind of go, and it tends to not work. But I listen to some podcasts of different things, particularly people who are doing studies, because I'm interested in what people are learning. I don't always agree with the study, but I like to try and understand the math of how people got there. And there was a study somebody did, and this premise that basically said, what kind of person are you? Are you a person who looks at America, the country, the USA? Are you a person who looks at it and says, I'm really glad that despite its flaws, it tries to do better? Or are you the person that says, I look at this country and I'm overwhelmed by its flaws and the need to be better than it is? there's a subtle difference between the two that really isn't that subtle at all. It's saying, I look at things and I look at, yeah, I live in this country. I've also lived all around the world. One of the things that a lot of people who complain a lot about the US, and this isn't a big video complimenting and patting the USA on the back, but if you've ever lived in, say, like I've lived for extended periods in China, I've lived for a very extended periods in Japan, I've lived in periods in Germany, in Spain, in the UK. I've lived in different places yeah, when I say lived, the only place I've really lived for any length of time was Japan. But I've stayed in these other countries for sometimes 2 months at a time. And I will tell you that America has plenty of things it can improve upon. Absolutely. But it's also it does pretty good with what it's got. There's always room to improve, but if you've ever been around to other countries, you do get an appreciation for some of the things that this country, meaning the USA, does right. Is there room to improve? Absolutely. Definitely in many areas. But the U.S. it tries to tackle things, sometimes competently, sometimes incompetently. But if for example, this is the one that always gets me is around climate. And as somebody again who spent extended times in China, China has a tough go of it. I visited India for 2 weeks. That's country has many locations that have a tough go of it. Spain, despite being, Barcelona is beautiful. I've never seen so much trash and crap on the ground as as Las Ramblas and parts of Barcelona. I think that there's, you can look at things and say, this is, I can't get over how miserable things are. Which there's definitely people who live in the U.S. who are that way. This is people who believe this is a deeply broken country. It's a racist country. It's a country where the police are just randomly running around shooting people every day. It's there's all these things that make America a terrifying, awful country. And then there's other people who look at it and go, look at the strides we've made. Look at the improvements that have been made. Look at the potential here. It's personality types, right? So I'm listening to this podcast, this guy talking about how these things break down into two pieces. And the premise was, in order to get anything really significant done, you'll see where this relates to comics, I promise. In order to get anything really significant done, you've got to be as much of a doer as an influencer. The reason being, you can do lots of things to improve matters. You can take things into your own hands and you can make a lot of progress. Unfortunately, you're limited by your own scale. You can only do so much as one person. But if you are also a good influencer, if you're a good leader, if you can encourage and inspire other people to do things, if you've got a good vision, you know what to do, and you can inspire other people to do the things you do, then you've got something really magical on your hands. Then, in addition to making positive change, in addition to improving things, you now are able to actually take your vision on a big scale and actually do more, to do more than you. And this is really positive. But the comment that the guy made was, if you walk into it believing things are broken and wrong and you have to repent, or you have to feel ashamed or bothered by the things that are flawed, if you look at it and say this is a completely broken system and it has to be completely replaced, the likelihood of you being successful in both doing it and inspiring other people to do it is dramatically reduced. As opposed to the person who goes in and says, we've made a lot of great progress, things are actually, we've done a lot of good here, and we need to build upon that good. Those people tend to be dramatically more successful, both in doing and inspiring and in influencing. And so the point of view of, he was using in terms of the country, do you believe that the USA is inherently broken? Or do you believe that the USA is a country that has, done a pretty good job with what it's got, but, can always do more? That second group is more likely to enact change. And he traces it to, Barack Obama, when he was president, he managed to capture that message. Whether you believed he did it or not, he captured that message pretty well. At times, George W. Bush captured that message pretty well. The interesting part is he traced it to Trump, and he's like, Trump was very polarizing. People were certainly against him. Half the country loved him, half the country hated him, etc. But part of Trump's success can be hinged to the fact that he basically was able to say, you know, um, I think it's a good place. I think we can do more, and that message had an easier time of resonating than Hillary's message, which was inherently more negative in how she was, and again, part of what he said is he didn't think either person really, fulfilled this either direction, but that was what the crowds got. And using it for, why did Biden drop in popularity so fast? Why, is Biden having the struggles he's having? Part of which is he never really harnessed that message of it's a good country and here's how we can make it better. Interesting. Again, you can agree or disagree. Fine. But when it comes to comics, who are the people who are having more success right now? Is it the people who are saying, hey, I think things could be better, and here's how I'm going to harness it and push it, which I think fits different groups. I think at times, different groups have been able to take that message and run with it. On the indie circuit, in the crowdfunded circuit, other places, the times when some of these projects have the most success is not when they're railing against something, but when they're painting a path forward, when they're showing you a better way, when they're saying, here's one way we can do it, let's try it this way. That seems to have more progress. The people who come in and say, I love comics, here's how I'm going to make them better, seem to have an easier go of it than the people who say, everything is broken, we've got to tear it all down. Including, by the way, if you look at the mainstream, you look at the people who have said, legacy characters are inherently bad or racist or old-fashioned or whatever it happens to be. We've got to tear them down. We've got to replace, similar to what Marvel did to a large extent in 2016, 2017. It didn't take. None of those legacy characters really ever worked. The only ones that were marginally successful were the ones that were already successful going in, those primarily being Miles Morales and Kamala Khan, who had a bit of a following going into that system. And if anything, that system hurt both characters. Miss Marvel dropped in popularity during the big push to increase her popularity. It had the opposite effect. But if you notice the strategy changed from, hey, here's something new and inspiring. And if you picked up, by the way, the initial copies of Miss Marvel or Miles Morales, both stories, whether it was G. Willow Wilson or Brian Michael Bendis, at the beginning, again, you may not remember this, but if you go back and look, at the beginning, both comics were going heavy into the idea of, here's something new, here's something inspiring. We're going to take what you loved about comics and we're going to take it further. The original stories of Kamala Khan Miss Marvel were about this kind of wide-eyed fangirl getting to be a superhero and what that meant. It was very much, in some ways, a love letter to superheroes. Miles Morales was this legacy of, Peter Parker just died in the Ultimate Universe, and here's somebody discovering their powers and trying to figure out what to do with that. Both were filled with I would say, optimism toward comics. Later, both comics became kind of a repudiation of comics. And if you look again at a lot of the all new, all different Marvel, where they're really going into replacement of legacy characters, it was rooted a lot in the old ways are stuffy and bad. Here's something new. It was not additive. It was subtractive. I think you could run this example again with Marvel. You could run it with DC, with Rebirth or the New 52 or DCU or some of these different activities. You could see what works and what didn't work. You could look at it with crowdfunding. Again, whichever crowdfunding side you're on, side Kickstarter, side Indiegogo, whoever it happens to be. But overall, you see a consistent story that plays out. If your approach is, hey, the platform, despite the fact that there's some issues here, I want to make it better. It plays better. It has more success than I've got to burn it all down. I've got to destroy it. That one seems to get stuck in the mud. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't generate support. It can generate some people who hate it along with you, but it doesn't generate, it doesn't generate action. It doesn't generate the change you want. It's an interesting theory. I like the approach because one of the places where a lot of these ideas fall apart is that at different times, different parties, different ideologies have had success. and then other times they fail. Why? What changed? You can't deny, if you look back in the last 20 years, you can't deny that the left wing, which had a very popular presidency of Obama, why was that successful? Why did that inspire people? You'd say, it's all trickery. No, there was a message there that hit. When Hillary tried to run a similar message a couple years later, it didn't hit at all. Why? Well, because there was different foundation there. There was a problem there in how the message was being carried across. We just got through an election earlier this week. And again, if you look at the races, and a lot of people are giving a lot of opinions on the races and what won and what didn't win and what carried the day, you'll notice that the messages that were more along the lines of, hey, this is a good country. We need to change some things to, make it better. We need to improve upon what we got, but we can't just hate everything that we are. We have to try and make it better. Those messages tended to work. Over in Michigan, the whole should we defund the police? Should we change the police? It failed as an initiative. Why did it fail? Well, in part because despite how angry people were at the police, the idea of let's blow the entire police up, that's not a winning message. Now, still a lot of people voted for it, but it wasn't able to carry the day. Whereas I'll bet if you went onto the street and you talked to a lot of people and said, hey, police could be a lot better. It could function better than it's functioning today. Don't you think? Don't you think that we could make some, pretty big changes to make the police function better? I'll bet you'd win support for that. But if you're coming in saying, we got to blow it all up, it's an inherently broken system, we got to just tear it all down, that is a much bigger struggle. Anyway, I don't know. I'm throwing these things out. I'm curious. I'm sure some of you will agree. Some of you will disagree. I'm sure in listening to this, you agreed with some things and disagreed with some things throughout the course of this video. That's kind of the interesting way of throwing a bunch of these data points out. See what you think. Anyway, let me know in the comments below. But I think there's some lessons there. There's something in there for us to think about. Thanks for listening.